Yeah, so please take the dogs away. Um, so if you look at the idea of research methodology, Maria, some of this will be a repetition, but this is going to be extremely short. It's not going to be that elaborate thing that I did with you people when I was doing research methodology. And I had come down to positivism, then I actually will pick it up today. Yeah, if you remember, what I had said was that everything began as um, not research, sorry, as search when in ancient civilizations like the Greek civilization and the ancient Indian civilization, there were attempts to try and understand uh, the world in which we live. Uh, and we were also trying to understand how uh, this world works, what is our place in it, why are we here? And so, in that sense, the earliest form of uh, searching for one's identity, not individual identity, but the entire species as such, that whole thing began as a search, and you will see that in the early Greek period, except for the Milesians who emphasized on the outside material world, uh, starting with Parmenides and up to Plato, you will realize that the conception that people held was that um, the conception that people held was that there is this uh, thing called the mind that all of us have. And the mind is the repository of knowledge. And it is something that the mind is something that the mind is something that has knowledge in it right at the time of our birth. Okay, so a very brief example of Plato. Plato had talked about the um, mind, so to speak, as being not a an empty receptacle at the time of birth, but it was something that was born with innate knowledge or inborn knowledge. Okay, so he said the outside world is the imperfect world, and perfect world was inside the head, the mind. So if you remember the examples that he gave, one was that of the horse. The perfect horse is not an empirical horse, not one that you can find any. You can gather as many horses as you want, but none of them will be a perfect horse. The perfect horse would be the one that exists as an idea in your mind, and therefore, for him, the ideal is the real, Unlike for us, where, we tend to see idealism and realism in binary opposition, we basically have to understand that there is, uh, what should I say? There is no binary opposition of that kind when it comes to the real and the ideal in people like Plato. Okay, and so for many years, many ancient civilizations searched. They searched for what the answer was for our existence. And in that sense, it was an ontological exercise. Ontological because we are trying to understand our being. Why are we here? Why are we like this? Why do we suffer? All these kind of things will come under the category of ontology. And so that is how we find that the search is ontological. But with the rise of Christendom, and of course, I'm cutting this story also extremely short, uh, you will find that there was an attempt made by the different scholars or scholastics, as they were called in those days, to find out what was the real interpretation of the Bible. Okay. Now, please remember that the original Bible was written in Latin and it was called the Vulgate. And this particular thing called the Vulgate was not accessible to all because most people were not literate in Latin. So what happened is they relied upon the clergy or the priests to tell them what was written in the Bible and what is it that Christianity wanted in terms of living a good life, a proper life. And for them, the idea of a good life was that which was virtuous. And a virtuous life was that which was in accordance with the principles enunciated in the Bible. If you went against the Bible, you were called a heretic and you were not allowed to interact with others. And with the progress of time, the heretics also met punishments which were in the nature of death. So if you look at all this, what we do find is that uh, there is absolutely, what should I say, uh, no idea among people as to what the Bible was. And even among the scholastics, there were disagreements. So I told you that the Christians, like most ancient civilizations, they also believed in the oneness of the universe. Okay. They didn't believe that the world was a multiverse. They believed that it was a universe. And they believed that all manyness came out of the oneness and returned back to that oneness. So you had to understand this particular principle in order to understand what it is that the Bible was saying. Though some of the things had some kind of commonality of agreement between the scholastics, uh, you will find that there were disagreements as well. So, what the Christian church, at that time there were no divisions, there was only one Christian church, and it was just called the Christian church, which was in Rome, which we today call the St. Peter's Cathedral. Uh, so you see uh, the people, the senior clergy, decided that it had the time had come for people to research the Bible. Okay, research is therefore something that starts happening in the Christian era. Uh, yes, for your information, this class is. I was also asked to teach research methodology. So I am doing that. This is an introduction to that. Uh, so if you look at what the Christians did, they created institutions where the study of the Bible by the scholastics could be carried out. Okay, so you find the university coming into being because the Christians believed in the oneness of the universe. And so the university is a Christian concept. And apart from that, we also see that there are other things, such as what do we say? Um, the setting up of seminaries. Seminaries were places where people could study and discuss the contents of the Bible. Okay, so that is the root of the word, the seminars that we talk about. The seminaries had periodic seminars for discussion. Today we actually talk about footnotes in our research. We say that if you're quoting somebody or if you're writing about something, then you'll have to show the place from which you took that particular argument. So you'll have to write the name of the book, the name of the author, the page number, all those kind of things. Now, this started in the seminaries. Okay, this particular idea of footnoting everything and showing as proof that this is not something that I have created. Look at it, it's there in the Bible itself. And you might be wondering, what is it that was the Bible if these people, if the clergy themselves are searching for things in it? The Bible is actually, in a way, in a manner of speaking, a compendium of several Gospels. Okay, so you have Peter, Luke, Matthew, all these people had written the Gospels. There were also sacraments, which were written by various people. And sometimes what one wrote came into contradiction with another. And it was the duty of the scholastics to resolve these contradictions and somehow uh, make the Bible one unified work which had no contradictions in it, which could not be questioned, and which had to be completely complied with. That is what you will find. Now, if you look at the uh, scholastics, they had many arguments. And what they did were called biblical hermeneutics. Hermeneutics, Hermeneutics. Hermeneutics is a Greek word which, when translated into English, will become interpretation. But not all interpretation is hermeneutic, because hermeneutics have a certain way of interpreting so that you don't end up with preposterous and useless uh, interpretations of things. Okay, so that was the biblical hermeneutics, which disappeared for quite some time till they were revived sometime towards the late 19th century and the early 20th century in social sciences by German social scientists like Wilhelm Dilthey, Hans Gadamer, okay, and before them also the Italian historian Vico and Schleiermacher, the German. So what you see is that once these people revived hermeneutics, not for the Bible, but to understand society, uh, to understand books of the past, uh, then the Germans pronounced hermeneutics as hermeneutics, Hermeneu. EU is pronounced oi in German. So they started pronouncing it as hermeneutics, and quite a few people pronounced that as hermeneutics to differentiate it from the biblical hermeneutics. Okay, but I don't subscribe to that school of thought. Hermeneutics is hermeneutics. If Germans want to pronounce it as hermeneutics, it's their wish. Okay, and now the thing that we have to understand is that this researching of the various gospels, the sacraments, all this is really, really the first step towards research. It's the first major step towards research. Okay. And what you must also understand is that research remained in the dominion of uh, Christendom for quite some time, because the levels of literacy, leave alone education, were quite low in most of Europe. This thing changed uh, with the invention of the printing press, the Gutenberg, and also the translation of the Bible into vernacular by people like Martin Luther. Okay, so they said, why do we have to study the Bible in Latin only? Why don't we study it in our own languages? So different uh, linguists started translating the Bible into their own vernacular languages. And the printing press made it possible to send the Bible to as many people as possible to read it. And that was when the clergy got into trouble. I'm not going to tell you the story of the Renaissance and the Reformation. That is where the crux of all this lies. And you find that the once the Renaissance and the Reformation happened, then it was a problem, so to say, for the Christian church, because the Christian church had become um, corrupt. You know about the sale of indulgences. I'm not going to go into that. And Martin Luther, who started a protest against the church for its atrocities and its corruption, uh, was summoned by the Pope with a papal bull. Uh, the Pope actually in Latin is Il Papa, the Father, and the papal bull is actually an order which was hit into a wall or into a door of somebody, asking them to appear before the clergy, the Pope himself here, of course. And Martin Luther defied the papal bull. I'm not going to go into the nitty-gritties of all the things that happened. The result of that was the split in the church. Okay? The split in the church because Martin Luther said uh, people who are praying on your behalf, people who are supposedly securing pardons for your sins, who are these people? They are also human beings. They are people like you. So if they can communicate with God and if they can also, in some sense, get answers from God, then you don't need these people as uh, a medium. You basically can pray to God directly and you can essentially uh, talk about, uh, you can pray to God and ask Him questions and get answers for that. Now, this caused a bit of a problem. The problem that was caused was that you could say, okay, I speak to God, and I say, God, by the way, is a Hebrew word which means no name. Okay, and the Yiddish word for this is Yahweh, Yahweh. Okay, no, Yahweh, yeah, Yahweh. Now, if you have heard of Yehovah, or some people call it Jehovah, it's supposedly the correct pronunciation of that is Yehovah. Yehovah is also nothing but uh, taken from Yahweh. So, yeah, Yehovah also is one of the ways in which people addressed God. Though God was the most popular form. And what you will see is that uh, people started praying to God. They started talking to God. So far, so good. But the problem was that they were not getting replies. Okay. The clergy also didn't get replies. What they did is they said, we prayed to God. You know, the practice of the confession existed with the church. You had to go and confess your sins uh, to to a clergyman, and that person would say, "I'll secure God's pardon for you." So you were under the impression that somehow this clergyman is able to communicate with God, and it is because of that communication with God that he is able to uh, secure a pardon for your sins. But when you're talking to God and God isn't talking back to you, then you have a problem. So Protestantism briefly ran into this problem of almost people turning into atheists because they said, I'm talking to God and God is not talking back to me. So what kind of a religion is this? You know, I mean, what kind of a God is this? So it was at that time that you had the intervention again of people like Martin Luther and his followers, who said God speaks through your conscience. Okay, all of us have a conscience. When we are doing something wrong, we know that we are doing something wrong, right? So what they said is that God is somebody who communicates with you through your conscience. And if you have done something wrong, confess God, and you will get his pardon if you say that I will not repeat these kind of mistakes. Okay, and that led to a very, very aggressive form of Christianity, which is, completely uh, built upon the idea that you will spurn all luxuries, that you live a very, very simple life. Okay, so you'll almost live like an ascetic. So that was basically what happened. And so in England, this particular form of extreme Protestantism uh, came to be called Puritanism. And then you see that in Scotland, it came to be called Presbyterianism. In France, it was called Calvinism. So let's not get into those details right now. It's not really important. But what happened is that you have these extreme forms, very, very extreme forms of very austere living, shunning all kinds of slightest luxuries. Okay, and so that was what Protestantism did. Uh, Now, seeing that there were so many different churches, in the Roman Church, there's only one denomination, and that is the Roman Church. But if you go to the Protestant churches, there are so many denominations. There's the Anglican Church, there is the Methodist Church, there is the Lutheran Church, there is the Baptist Church. So you can go on. There are so many different churches. Okay, and what happens with these, we find is that we are looking at a situation where there is the Protestant side of it doesn't have one organized church. And this was also a bit of a discomfort for the Roman Church because all these smaller denominations came up in opposition to the Roman Church. So it decided to say that there can be only one church, and that is the Roman Church. And to call it the one church, they called it the Catholic Church. Now, Catholic, if you look at the word, it only means all encompassing. Okay? All encompassing is what Catholic means. It is not a religious word. Catholicism became one of the religious ways of describing the Roman Church, but you can even today say that somebody, when he looks at society, has a Catholic perspective. That doesn't mean that he has a Catholic Christian perspective. He has a perspective that is wide, that is inclusive of many things. Now, once a church appropriated the word Catholic, then people found that what would they use? They had a problem. What would they use to say that this is all incorporating and not something that is in the nature of uh, the church? So the word secular was chosen. Now, the word secular again means the same thing as Catholic, which is all encompassing. Okay. We find if you look at, uh, you know, these reports that are generated periodically about industrial growth, then you have the economy divided into sectors. You say in so and so sector there was negative growth, in so and so sector there was positive growth. You'll also quantify that and say this was the amount of positive growth and this was the amount of negative growth. And you finally say that if I have to sum up the whole thing, then it is the secular growth of the industry is so and so. Now, let me also draw your attention to the fact that when we say secular, it doesn't mean the same thing to all people. Okay, secular as if you look at the Europeans and the Americans, especially the Americans, secular is complete non-recognition to religion. Okay, so you don't find the Americans using Christian or any form of religion anywhere. In fact, the only place where they even mention God is on the dollar bill. And the dollar bill says, in God we trust. Okay, that's the only thing that they basically say. Uh, what we have to understand by secularism here in India is not uh, saying, I don't care what your religion is, please keep it at home, which is what the Europeans and the Americans were saying. You know, please keep it at home, the religious part. The Americans, in fact, are so paranoid about it that even for Christmas, they do not say Merry Christmas. They say Happy Holidays, because Merry Christmas is invocation of a religion. So unless you're very personally good friends, you're on your phone, or you're just two people talking together, you don't say Merry Christmas. You say Happy Holidays in America. That is not the case in Europe anyway. But still, even in Europe, it basically means that we keep religion out of public life. Religion is something that is to be confined to private life. Okay, and in India, when we talk about secularism, we don't say we don't recognize religion in public. On the contrary, we say we recognize religion and we recognize all religions as having the same message. And therefore, all religions are equal. That is what we say. And uh, perhaps what we mean by our secularism is best summed up by what Gandhi told the British. He told them that I like your Jesus Christ very much. I like your Jesus Christ very much, but I don't like you Christians because you have forgotten the teachings of Christ and you have gone on to colonize people, you have gone on to torture other people. So, okay, so in that sense, you see that in India, we have a slightly different view of what religion is. Now, one of the things that happened, one of the most important things that happened post the Reformation is something to do with the concept of the mind. I told you Plato believed that uh, at the time of birth itself, we were born with innate knowledge, okay, and we didn't uh, need to look at empirical objects. Empirical objects are objects which are outside of us. Okay, so this was the kind of belief that was generally held in Europe. Uh, but it was John Locke's work, which is an essay concerning human understanding, which turned this whole belief upside down. John Locke said when we are born with a mind which is completely empty. He called it a tabula rasa. Tabula rasa, because this is again a Latin expression. We know that paper came from China and it came many centuries later. So at that time, if you had to write anything, you carved it on tablets of stone. Okay, not your computer tablets, but tablets of stone. You carved on those. So a tabula rasa was a tablet of stone on which nothing was carved. Okay, so what is the significance of saying that the mind is a tabula rasa? Okay, the significance is quite straightforward. What he said, John Locke, is that when we are born with no knowledge, but we are born with two things. One is sense perception, and the other is cognition. These two things work in conjunction with each other in order to produce knowledge to a human being. Now, what are our senses? You know our senses. I don't have to tell you. I have five senses: smell, touch, taste, hearing, seeing, all these. Right? So, what Locke was saying is that the world is essentially outside of you. It's not contained in your head, as uh, Plato said, or Parmenides said. Okay, he said it's outside of you. It contains a number of objects. It is through the usage of your senses that you internalize the external world. Okay, so he said, if you've never seen a dog, how will you know that what you're seeing is a dog? Okay, if you've never seen a dog, how will you know that what you're seeing is a dog? right? And a disciple of Plato, not in his own time, but much later, uh, in the times of Locke, he said, if you don't know what is a dog, how do you know what you are seeing is a dog in the first place? Okay. How did you say that this is a dog? That's because you already knew that it's a dog, not because you saw it and learned that as a dog. But then that is a different kind of debate altogether. Let's not get into that particular debate. Now, if we look into the idea as such of uh, what do we say? If we look into the idea of, you know, the internalization of the world through the senses, then the question is, does one sense work at one time? Is it something that works sequentially? Okay. Uh, the answer to that is no. All five senses work at the same time and send that data to the mind. Okay. So typically picture yourself in a movie theater. You're seeing a movie, so you're seeing the picture. You're hearing the dialogue, you're hearing the music, so you're hearing. Somebody next to you is eating popcorn, so you can smell it. Okay. You're having stand. Feel it. Now, all these things, all these things are happening simultaneously. Then how is the brain able to make sense of these? How is the brain able to make sense of these? The brain is able to make sense of these because of the fact that it is capable of cognition. What is cognition? Cognition is bringing in all these separate inputs, different inputs, not separate, different inputs together into a cohesive, coherent form. That is how you'll see that there is understanding. Okay, that is the reason why uh, Locke called his essay an essay concerning understanding. Okay, so the world is outside, and whatever is happening for us inside us. I mean, it is being internalized, and our ability to put all these things together and see them as one picture is what gives us knowledge, understanding. Okay, now the thing is that this particular perception also came up with yet another thing that happened post Reformation. Okay, what happened post Reformation was the birth of individualism. The birth of individualism. At this point, it might seem to you that why are we talking about individualism? As we go further, it'll become clear to you as to why individualism is a necessary thing to discuss when we start talking about empiricism or positivism for that matter. Okay, so what we are seeing uh, through this particular period is that of prioritizing the individual over society. Now look at somebody like Aristotle. Aristotle says what is good for the society is good for the individual. Okay, so what comes first? Society. So good in the Aristotelian sense of the term is collective. You know, there are no separate goods for different people. There are no separate goods for different people. Okay, what we are looking at is simply this. We are looking at the idea of my good lies in the good of other people in the society. Okay, so that is the collective good. But when you look at what happens with individualism, individualism says there is no such thing as common good. What is good for one individual need not be good for another individual. So every individual has to pursue his or her own good. Okay, now this is also something that changes your understanding of society. If you look at what Aristotle said, a logical corollary that you can draw to his statement that what is good for the society is good for the individual is that individuals are there because there is society. Okay, that is what it says. Individuals are there because there is society. Whereas when we come down to law, we are saying, what is society? If there are no individuals, can you have a society? So, first, individuals come. And when individuals come, they form a society. So, first, it is the individual, then it is a society. This is not so easily resolved. Let me ask you a question. If you see people dressed as soldiers of the army, okay, we say these are uh, soldiers of the army, right? So, what exactly are we saying? What exactly are we saying when we say that these are soldiers of the army? We are assuming there is an army, and these are soldiers that belong to that army. And what gives them away as those who belong to the army is their uniform. Army uniform gives them away as members of the army. Now, can you have soldiers without an army? You can't. So you need an army first. Then you need soldiers. How does your admission happen? You say MA admissions are open, and when people come and join, then the MA class is formed. But there is already an MA class which is there and which you are fitting into. So this is yet another complexity which we will deal with as we go forward uh, with this kind of a thing. Now, what you have to understand is individualism leads to people becoming more and more self-centered. And that is the reason why research, when it is done empirically, meaning when you're looking at objects outside of yourself and saying, I'm doing research about these, you are the key. What you see, what you deduce logically and rationally becomes research. And how do you ensure that you are deducing things logically and rationally? You are doing that by following a method. There's no one method, there are different methods. But what is a method? A method is something that lays down the rules of how it operates. What are the exclusions? What are the inclusions? So, method or methodology gets tied to research. So, that is how you have the birth of research methodology. I've told you about research, but I have not told you about methodology. I will tell you about methodology day after tomorrow, because tomorrow again I'll do ecology, right? So you're going to do this alternate days. Otherwise, one will get left out, and the other will be covered in greater length. All right. So what we will do is we will kind of look at ecology tomorrow. Or I'll do one thing, I'll make an exception so that you don't lose the thread. Tomorrow, I shall also introduce how the methodology happened, and then we'll go on to understanding things of ecology once again. So, a request, I don't know how many of you are actually interested in coming. Practically, Maria is not your classmate. So I see two people, and the second person came quite late. Yesterday, again, there were two people. So I'm really not very sure about how many of you are interested. If you're really interested, well, if you're really interested, even if it is one person, I don't mind. I'll go ahead and do the teaching. I'm not one of those people who believes that that I need a big audience, otherwise I can't teach. But the others are, I think, wasting away an opportunity. I'm not such a great teacher or anything, but at least I know what is what, and I can tell you that which you haven't been told. Right, Madam Harshita? You wanted to say something.
Sorry to interrupt, sir. Uh, I don't have ecology, that is global environment politics, as my optional. So may I join the class tomorrow for research methodology session?
You can. You
Oh,
can also join for ecology. See, if it's not a part of your, it's not an optional for you. Uh, it still doesn't matter. You need to know about ecology. Even a stupid girl like Greta Thunberg thinks she can talk about it. So if everybody thinks that they can talk about it, you should know about it.
yes,
So,
sure. Thank you.
I would advise you to join that, not for examination purposes, but for being uh, in step with times.
Yes.
Okay. So tomorrow, today I was supposed to meet those intermediate students. I didn't meet them because I had a very bad attack of vertigo. So I'll meet them tomorrow. So can we start at 6 tomorrow? Is that okay?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, it's okay.
All right. So tomorrow we start at 6. And tomorrow we'll finish the methodology part. Okay. Not finish it. We'll understand the emergence of methodology and how it is different from theory and other things like that. So, thank you very much. If you can, please tell your friends that I would appreciate it very much if they attended the class. Some of you might be going by the principle of we can go back to YouTube and check it later. I don't know if you're doing that, but really, I'd like you to attend the class. So thank you very much, and see you tomorrow at 6. Please remember that. 6 o'clock. So have a good night, and I'll see you tomorrow.
Sure.
Yeah.
Good evening, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Harshita.